Children of hoarders, when did your parents go beyond the point of no return? And was there a reason they hoard? My grandmother was a hoarder, but only with food. She would buy in bulk, and never throw anything away, even if it was past the expiration date. When we visited, we would very quietly throw some things away, and not tell her. There was a jar of pickles in her fridge that was older than me. Male 27. She did it because she grew up in extreme poverty and neglect. Her mother would just abandon her and her siblings for days, and they would be reduced to digging through trash to eat. When she grew up, she made sure that there would always be food available. I noticed my dad was over the edge when every cardboard box that entered the house was not allowed to leave because I can find a use for it. And we also at one point had 14 miniature schnauzers in a single-story suburban house because we don't have one in that color yet. The animal hoarding really gets to me. My mother-in-law had to have a chihuahua in every color. Never took the time to potty train any of them. Never really paid much attention to any of them, but she had one in every color. Those poor dogs. Dated a girl with a hoarder mom. Their full-size basement, over 2,000 square feet, was always wall-to-wall with just stuff with just a little path to get to the washer and dryer. It didn't creep into the upstairs until the first son moved away. Girlfriend had 2 older brothers, then the brother's room was filled with dollar store stuff and old clothes, etc. The other brother graduated and his room was filled with junk. Then the marriage started to fall apart, and that's the state I saw it in. Then entry was floor to ceiling with boxes about a 2-foot wide path that took you to the living room or right to the bedrooms. The couch was clear with about 3-foot path in front of it. Racks of clothes, stacked boxes. Lots and lots of unopened dollar store toys. All her kids were older than 18 and no grandkids. The kitchen was stacked with piles of old newspaper. Only 2 open spots to eat at the kitchen table. Broke up with old girl just before she moved out, so I don't know how it ended. I'm guessing not well. I now feel much better about that cupboard I have that I can't shut fully. I have the opposite problem. My mom is a minimalist. She is also emotionally remote, and growing up, all love was conditional. I think she wanted the appearance of a perfect household and a perfect life. Any grade less than 90% was punished, and bathrooms were cleaned twice a week. So she would go through the house and throw out anything that was out of place. Our house was sterile and cold. The only memories I have left of my childhood are a single photo album that she puts in the basement, and anything that I have managed to squirrel away. She has thrown away everything from my dad's childhood and has 3 pictures from hers. I go into a panic when I can't find anything because growing up it meant that she had thrown it. I find myself accumulating stuff now being an adult because I am comforted by things being around me. She gave me a copy of that awful life-saving magic of cleaning up for Christmas. Thanks, Mom. I think it was when my dad left, about 15 years into their marriage. I grew up in a messy house, but not hoarder-level messy. I know my dad cleaned up a lot too. After my parents got divorced, my mom went off the rails. Depressed, lashing out, and no cleaning. It was a while ago, so I was pretty young, but I think this is also when she started buying excessive amounts of stuff and never throwing anything out. I know she doesn't feel like her job has much value, so I think she derives a lot of satisfaction from buying gifts for people. She used to go through our trash at night and wake us up screaming if we had thrown anything out that could be useful again. As bad as it got after my dad left, my siblings and I still used to clean all the time, so it wasn't horrendous. We'd periodically clean out the fridge and clean rooms of the house. After we all moved out, it got really, really bad. Just piles of crap completely covering every surface. She still buys way too much shit and gets furious if we try to stop her. I receive boxes of crap all the time as gifts, and I just donate it immediately. I don't even want to thank her for it for fear that she'll start buying even more shit as gifts. As a result, I've worked hard to be a pretty tidy person and throw stuff out on the regular. I fucking hated growing up that mess, and I would never date a girl who was messy at all. Just don't want to risk raising kids in the same environment where I grew up. My mother owned 3 small businesses. During the financial crisis of 2008, the bank recalled the business loan. She refused to deal with the loss, and has now idealized that time in her life as the best thing that ever happened to her, even though it was awful for pretty much everyone because she mishandled her finances so badly and put the family in debt to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Anyway, imagine having the inventory of 3 Walgreens. Her businesses had nothing to do with drug stores, but they have a similar level of inventory moved into your home. All the hallways, the bedrooms, the living room, family room, dining, kitchen, etc. are now totally unusable. Boxes and loose mountains of product are stacked higher than your head. You can only sleep on half of your bed because the other half is covered in stuff, and to access the bed you have to climb up and over stacks of boxes. You live in constant fear that the family pets are going to dislodge something and be buried alive. You live in fear that you are going to be buried alive. That's what life was like for 7.5 years. No amount of therapy, or medication, or throwing things away. We once brought a dumpster to the house and got rid of an entire bedroom full of junk, but she replaced it within a few weeks. Or serious talks had any change on her behavior. For unrelated reasons, my parents got divorced this year. A stipulation of the divorce was that she, and her stuff, had to vacate the home. Instead of hiring moving trucks, she was doing 2 or 3 trips daily with her minivan. My dad had to get a court order forcing her to remove the stuff, and the judge made my dad vacate the premises because my mom insisted that he was the problem. It took a fleet of U-Hauls and 24 hours going hard to remove all her stuff. She's happy with all of her stuff. She chose it over her family over and over again. It was always more important than us, more important than our safety and health. I wish that she loved me more than she loves a box of expired product that hasn't been opened since 2008, but she doesn't, and I've spent a lot of time in therapy dealing with that. Fuck man, I'm so worried this is where my mother's at. Shoulder-height stacks of boxes covered in clothes and other stuff everywhere. You can't even get into certain rooms. After years of my trying to bully her into fixing the problem, like you said, renting dumpsters, trying to help her organize or get rid of stuff, getting my siblings to remove all our stuff from the house, offering to get her professional help, I finally gave her an ultimatum. Christmas was the breaking point, when we all saw how bad it had gotten, and I can't bear to see her live like that anymore. I told her she either gets it under control or I stop visiting. The panicked, no, and desperate hug she gave me broke my heart, but I just don't know what to do. I'm a hoarder with 2 adult children. I've been getting psychiatric help for 4 years now. I'm on medication to treat my major depressive disorder and ADHD. I've tried one system after another, and failed at every one. I've rented dumpsters and purged only to have it pile up again. I hired a hoarding expert who honestly seemed more ADHD than me. My daughter lives with me, and I feel terribly guilty for the example I've set for her. Her room is as filthy as the rest of the house. She's also under a psychiatrist's care. Hoarding is a mental illness. Threatening and setting ultimatums won't help resolve the problem. You can maintain a relationship with your mother without visiting her at home. Please try doing that before you abandon her. I can't imagine how much worse I would feel if my son refused to see me. Unfortunately, being aware of the problem and ashamed of its result doesn't magically cure you of the basic disorder. My mother was a hoarder. I don't know when it started. It was well established by the time I was born. She had been forced to give up 2 babies for adoption in her teens, with rumors unconfirmed that it was her older brother who impregnated her. After that, it always seemed that she spent the rest of her life trying to fill up the hole those 2 babies left in her heart. She had 6 more children of her own, plus adopted a 7th, me, and then she raised several of her grandchildren after her kids were grown and gone, and then she just started collecting random homeless people and giving them a place to stay. Our house was a typical hoarder's house, filthy and wall to wall with junk piled and stacked. It was a horrible embarrassment, and I wonder sometimes how I'd be different if I'd been raised in a normal home. After we kids were grown, sometimes we would come in collectively and do a massive clean-up of the house, and I can still remember the look of sadness, grief, on my mom's face when she would sit and watch passively as we carried off all her piles of junk. And she would hide as much junk as she could, to keep us from getting rid of it all. That's when I realized she had a weird dysfunctional attachment to this stuff that normal people don't feel. Prior to that, I'd always just thought of her as lazy or maybe just horribly ignorant of how to organize things. During my 20s, Dad developed traits he hadn't exhibited before, including hoarding. He had an undiagnosed tumor in his right temporal lobe. That's an area of the brain responsible for high-level functions, motivation, prioritization. He literally did not know when he was finished reading the newspaper, so he kept years of newspapers stacked in his place. He was terrified of losing something important if anything got thrown away. What finally got him on track to proper treatment was a CT scan. What ended up happening? Did the tumor get removed treated? Did his hoarding stop afterwards? Dad got his diagnosis late in the game. He would not have survived another month without treatment. In technical terms, it was a 5.5 cm grade 4 astrocytoma with a 10 mm midline shift. Surgery and radiation therapy bought him 2 years, and most of that was quality time, which was as good as medical science could do. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.